Hi and welcome to Gardening with DC. In today's seed series video, we're going to have a quick look at gardening and how you can get started. So, you've come to a time of life when you've decided you'd like to start growing some plants, maybe some herbs, maybe you want a feature plant on your balcony, perhaps a feature plant in your lounge room, or perhaps you've just bought a house and you've got some garden for the first time. And in any of those scenarios, you haven't done any gardening before. You feel like you know nothing about any plants. Perhaps you have done some gardening before and you've killed everything. You're just sort of certain that you don't have any sort of a green thumb at all. So if any of that sort of those sort of scenarios ring a bit of a bell, hopefully this video is for you. So let's get started. And I'm going to start off with sort of slightly philosophical bent, and just sort of try and get you thinking about what gardening actually is, and what it definitely isn't. So gardening isn't botany. They're sort of related, but they're sort of different. And what I want you to try and do is think about gardening as just a really sort of simple pursuit. I think most gardeners would consider themselves to be relatively straightforward and sort of simple, practical type people. And I think a nice way to illustrate this is the naming conventions that gardeners use, particularly with pests and diseases. So whitefly, for example, is just a fly that's white. Black soot is just something that's black and sooty. Black spot is something that's black and spotty. White curl grubs, well, they're white, curly, and they're grubs. So we try and keep it relatively simple. Now, having said that, I don't want to suggest that we are plebeians, because actually we can very easily provide a counter argument and suggest that us gardeners are scientists, frankly, because if science is all about practical pursuit and gaining knowledge from practical stuff and observing what's going on, then that's the essence of building your gardening knowledge. It's and that's why sort of gardeners talk about experience, and you know, to be honest with you, I probably am a better gardener than my dad, but I'd still think of him as being a better gardener than me, because he has substantially more years of experience. He's built up a bigger body of knowledge over a longer period of time. Okay, so I want you to think about that gardening isn't an intellectual pursuit. It's not about sort of acquiring knowledge in a sort of an abstract way of reading a book or frankly watching a vlog, for example. That's not really what it's about. It's about building your knowledge from doing practical stuff and observing what is going on. Why a plant has gone well versus not gone well, etc., right? So that's sort of the concept. So what are our inputs? What are the influences, if you like, on whether a plant goes well or doesn't go so well? Just sort of understand at a sort of a basic level. And frankly, when I say understand at a basic level, it's all there is. Actually, there isn't like a degree level of this stuff. It is what it is, right? So don't think, I'm just doing gardening basics here. It's this is it, right? so let's think about what those sort of inputs are. And I think I'm going to talk about, I think it's probably 6 in the end. Feel free to tick them off as we go. So first of all, sunlight or light. What is a bodies above us or above the plants. Plants are they're quite clever. What's their trick? Well, they convert through their leaves energy from the sun, the light. I think it's the blue and the red light. They convert that energy into chemical energy that enables them to sort of grow further. So light is really important for plants. So you've got to think about that, and the purpose of that light is to enable them to grow. So it's through photosynthesis, process we call it photosynthesis. I don't think plants have a name for it. And what they're doing is they're converting energy from the sun into energy that they can then use. So an example of that, for example, an example of that would be plants that you will generally find that would be recommended for potentially a shadier area will have a bigger leaf, right? To maximize their availability to capture sunlight. Whereas, for example, something that might go very well in a bonkers light-filled place, for example, a sandy desert or whatever else. So a cacti appears to not really have leaves at all, right? So sunlight. So you've got to understand sunlight and how the plant that you have uses that light to grow through photosynthesis. Okay, so if we've got above the ground, we've also got below the ground. So we've got our leaves and we've got our roots. Okay, so obviously our soil, it houses the roots, so it gives the plant a base, a steady base, so it's not going to move around. But also that soil, or the roots in the soil, the roots' purpose is not just to keep it stable, but to take up water and nutrition from the soil. So an example of that is when you are watering, don't water the leaves. That's not, there's not some exceptions to watering up there, but that's generally not where the plant wants the water to take up. It wants the water down in the ground. So a really good habit to get into is you water the soil, don't water the leaves. There are some exceptions to that, but there are exceptions to everything. But as a general rule, so you're watering there. So that's sort of our third one, water. Understand how much water your plant wants. Again, a couple of illustrations of that would be so succulents, for example, which are terrific plant to get started with. Succulents have their own capability to hold water within the plant itself, so they don't need so much water. Whereas, for example, if you wanted to grow some salad leaves or some baby spinach or something like that, they need quite a lot of water because you're wanting to pick leaves and then grow again. Okay, so really, really important that you understand how much water your plant needs, and within that soil and that water aspect as well, they don't want too much, right? So you'll hear gardeners talk about free draining soil. So we want there to be sufficient sort of supplies of water and nutrition and oxygen in that soil for the plant to take up. But too much is bad, right? So an excess of water, we need it to be able to drain away. Otherwise the plant basically drowns. Okay, so really, really important that you understand that. Now, so the fourth one, so 1, 2, 3, sunlight, soil, water. I'm not really going to talk about nutrition at the getting started stage. If you've got a good soil, then you shouldn't have to worry sort of too much about plant nutrition at that sort of early stage. But again, just sort of understand that some plants will require more nutrition than other plants. So obviously, to go back to the lettuce leaf, baby spinach sort of example, they're hungry plants. You're wanting a crop they're growing, pick and grow again. So they'll need a lot more nutrition than, for example, a succulent that is, it's going to grow, for example, much more slowly. So 1, 2, 3, 4. So the fifth one is just understand the plant that you have. Understand all those things. How much sunlight does it need? How much water does it ideally need? What sort of soil does it ideally need? Does it need a sandy soil, for example, if it's a sort of more of a succulent type place where it doesn't need very much water, right? So just understand your plant, really. What are its ideal sort of needs? And then finally, on a sixth one, so just understand what your level of commitment is going to be. If honestly you only got sort of 5 minutes a week, don't start by trying to grow a massive vegetable garden, because it's just not going to happen. So just understand what your level in terms of time, what your level of commitment in terms of time is ideally going to be, and then base your getting started around that. Some activities, so for example, my dad's allotment, for example, that he would have had for 50 years or something like that, it requires at least sort of a couple of hours every week, basically, because on the allotment holders group that they have there, if you allow weeds to grow up on your allotment, and then potentially they obviously go on to other people's plots, you'll be thrown off the allotment. So I think he has to commit at least a couple of hours a week, bare minimum. Obviously that goes up considerably in summertime, because he's growing lots of fruit. So just be aware of that, what your level of commitment is going to be. So gardening, getting started. Understand sunlight, what it's there for. It's for photosynthesis. It's for the leaves. Understand soil. That's all about the roots taking up water, nutrition, oxygen to circulate. Understand water. How much water does your plant ideally need? It's as important to not overwater as it is to underwater. Okay, and just because a plant you think, it doesn't look so flash, it doesn't necessarily mean it needs more water. It often is the case that it's already got too much water. Nutrition, don't worry about that too much at this juncture, and then just understand the plant. Ideally, in terms of those things, what's its ideal, and what your level of commitment is going to be. Now let's just carry on along those sort of practical lines, and I'm just going to talk very, very quickly about tools, and I'm only going to really talk about 2 tools. So watering can, going back to what I was saying, make sure you water the soil. So you don't want it coming out at a gallon a second and everything exploding. Nice gentle water. So it's feeding through nicely, going down in the soil, percolating through, and getting the roots. It's really important to water deeply. So you're better off watering deeply less often, rather than a sort of every single day. Better to give it deep. Doing that less frequently than every day. And look after your watering can. Don't put bleach in it or other chemical. Or think, I need to clean something. So I'll put some washing up liquid in it, or just keep it free of any sort of household chemicals, any of that sort of malarkey. And then the other tool that I wanted to talk about was secateurs. Secateurs are the one tool that I have with me constantly. They get used every single day. So invest at an early stage if you're getting started with a good pair of secateurs. By that I mean, well, let me provide an example. So the secateurs that I have now, I think I've had them for going to say about 5 or 6 years. They cost me somewhere in the region of $45. The one thing that I do, and I'd encourage this with any kit that you have, is look after and maintain them. So those secateurs, I use them every single day. They are always with me in my back pocket, and every day they get cleaned, and every day they get sharpened. They don't get left outside in the weather, any of that sort of stuff. So with your tools, you know, it's an investment, and if you buy good tools, they should, you know, as a sort of you know, hobby gardener, that sort of thing, they should last you a lifetime if you look after and maintain them. So I think that about covers it, getting started. So we sort of started off with, we'll just recap very quickly, sort of started off with philosophy, you know, just keep it simple. You know, it's all about learning, really. Key inputs, so obviously we've got sunlight, leaves, right, photosynthesis. Then we've got the soil, which is all about the roots, which is how plants take up water, and nutrition. So we've got water, you know, just understand how much they need. Don't worry too much about nutrition. You know, understand the plant, what it sort of ideally wants from those inputs, and just, you know, your level of commitment. Anyway, look, I hope that's been helpful to get underway. What I would say is, you know, it is about practical stuff and just observing what's going on. So get out there and get involved. See you next time.